I'm in a very social career for someone who isn't very social. Many of you are probably like me. You're very motivated to do what you love, but you're a little bit intimidated by what is required in order to do so. In the wonderful world of historical research and museum work, socializing is a critical element. And despite the online nature of social media and connecting with viewers, it's still an evolving aspect, and it's still very much required. In fact, I would say that socializing is getting more and more advanced and more necessary the more museum work and history is becoming online and growing a rapid online presence. Let's discuss 5 ways you can lean into your personality, lean into your interests, and overcome social anxiety in order to become the historian you are meant to be. This video has 2 objectives. The first is to let you know that you're not alone. Sure, you're probably looking at historians in your field, people working in museums, people who are online content creators in the world of history, and you're thinking that they're killing it, right? They have this natural gift, this talent, they're born with it, that there's only a certain type of person that could be a historian. Well, in fact, no. That people can learn to become this. It's a skill and it's a muscle you can develop. And 2, you can overcome this. Anxiety is something that you can work through in therapy, but there's a specific kind of anxiety that comes with the workplace. And I'm living proof of that. I'm someone who did it. I made it. I'm in the history field, but I also collapse out of social exhaustion pretty much every week. Hi, I'm Madeline Feierstein, trained historian and criminologist. I switched careers during the COVID-19 pandemic. After completing my bachelor's in criminology, I moved into working with law enforcement, and I soon realized that, wow, I have some personality quirks, and there's some things that don't make me jive well and fit well with everyone. I realized I enjoyed the field very much academically, pretty much on paper, but the social aspects of the career were something I was not prepared for. I wasn't taught and trained this kind of stuff. So for context, I'm also a very awkward person. I do much better in one-to-one environments or smaller groups, which sucks because that's not what the majority of workplaces are like. Or at least maybe if you work in a small business, you still have to go out and talk to people. In 2022, I started to switch into history. I began volunteering at a local house museum while pursuing my master's in history. I began to create tours, write articles, and actually make more of a name for myself and be associated with certain topics in history. Of course, regular therapeutic advice is also extremely helpful in overcoming your social anxiety. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I've been through the ringer with this, and I have a few tips to share for you. Also, therapeutic advice, while amazing and very necessary, comes from a particular lens, and I want to share with you tips from one worker to another, one historian to another. And I want to say a disclaimer that these tips I have for you wholly depend on the type of work you do, right? It depends on where you live. It depends on what exactly your role is. It depends on if you're going to be 100% in person or if your job is more remote. But I hope that these tips can help you as you move further into your historian career and as your trajectory changes to help you with longer term goals if that's not exactly where you are right now. Number 1, start with less intensive events. If you want to start networking a little more, promote your book, advertise your workplace's events, or simply just get in the room where the big leagues are, you should start with the less intensive events. Now, less intensive events look like, for example, nonfiction book clubs, seasonal events like Christmas events or like summer block party stuff, lectures at other museums, things where you are essentially a guest or a visitor and you can kind of sit back and enjoy the event. You don't have to be working it a lot, right? You don't have to be handshaking all the time. It's a great way to meet staff and other people without the pressure of performance. You can slip them your business card, hand them a flyer on your upcoming book, just, chat about oh my gosh, our place would love to do something like this, or this is something we've been trying to do for a while, or I really admire your institutions, like how you're doing this, how you're talking about this topic. That's really great. Low-key stuff like that. Now look, handing someone your business card is self-promotion, which for many of us is a muscle we're going to have to learn. It may seem really self-centered to be like, hi, I'm me. I like you and what you're doing. Here's more about me. But honestly, that's how people get to know you. And especially when you have a reason for handing your card, don't be that guy that just goes, here's my card, here's my card, here's my card, right? Because that's kind of dumb. What you want to do is have a reason for doing it. Like, oh wow, I would love to collaborate. Or you know what? Here's my card. I would love to do a book talk here. I got a book coming out. Here's more about it. Honestly, you can also ask people for their card. When you're talking with them and you're discussing a way to collaborate or how you can work with them in the future, can I get your card? I would love to email you and stuff like that. Or even look, if their email is online, you can simply ask them, would you mind if I reached out to you after the event to coordinate something? They'll say yes, right? Because museums and institutions, other historians love working with each other. It's a very fun crowd. Everyone likes creating new programming. So if you're nervous about handing your own, ask for someone else's or simply suggest you connect at a later date. Number 2, lean into your interests. My favorite way of socializing in the world of history is being a freaking nerd about it. I love attending events and hosting events that are based on my favorite historical figures, historical time periods, and whatnot. Sometimes we forget to be tourists, right? We forget to learn, we forget to be a student. And with these ones, you're gonna want to find like-minded people, because a great buffer when you're nervous about meeting people or nervous about self-promotion is having something to talk about that you both just adore. So if you go to, let's say, a lecture on Alexander Hamilton, and you're just like a freaking nerd about Alexander Hamilton, you have a plethora of topics to already discuss with people in that room. Nothing screams invested in your work than when your passion comes out. Passion matters more than publication count. Really. You could have published a dozen books and just be a complete dud. You could have published and done a lot of podcasts, but if you're not able to talk to people, no one's going to want to work with you. This is where we can also reach out to institutions, handshake with people with a specific event in mind. Not just the general, here's my card, I'm writing a book, but like, oh my God, I actually wrote about Alexander Hamilton last month. I specialize in Hamilton. Let's coordinate. Because that way you have more of a reason to approach somebody, and it's not just a general let's work together, right? It has more of a direction. So I literally paved my own way in the world of history as I was doing my master's and as I was transitioning into the world of history, because I did a lot of volunteering, and I volunteered for stuff that truly interested me. I created tours and lectures on Civil War hospitals. I became kind of informally known as the hospital girl in my town because that's kind of all I talked about for several years. My willingness to be so nerdy about what I loved and to host things about what I loved attracted the right people to me. It brought the right people in the room. And even if it's not people you can work with directly, these are going to be visitors and guests who will come to more of your stuff. I have had, on several occasions, tour attendees then come to my lecture later on. Or people who went to my lecture who are now going to suggest my tour to their friends, and so on and so on and so on. So half the time, you may not even realize that your socializing and networking is working behind the scenes. It's bringing the right people into your room, but that just may happen in a little bit. You may see it at the event. You may not see it working in between. Number 3, go to events with more structure. At this point in the video, you're probably wondering when I'm going to stop talking about in-person events, and I'm really sorry to say there's no way around this. You're going to have to go to in-person events, even if you're a remote worker. I know that there's a lot of Zoom networking, a lot of Zoom events, but to be honest, the world of history is still very much an in-person field. It still requires interaction, and a lot of the elements are interactive because 90% of what museums, organizations, and universities offer are in-person types of stuff. Now, you can mitigate your social anxiety about this by going to an event with a very regimented schedule. Structured events like academic conferences, guided tours, panel discussions, or even like a theatrical performance all have a very strict schedule they have to adhere to. It's not very loosey-goosey. It's not like the craft fair you're going to and then finding someone to meet. It's not just the Alexander Hamilton book fair and you're just wandering around. You have a place to be at a certain time, you know who's speaking, and you know where you're sitting. Now, some of us may need to start with those low-stake events and then work our way up to the more structured, because for me, the structured events gave me a lot of anxiety because I didn't know how these worked. I also didn't know, I didn't have people to sit next to sometimes, so I was really concerned about what I would do with myself. But at the same time, it actually helped that there wasn't a lot of leeway in between the events. You kind of had to move from room to room, or you were honestly just in that seat most of the day. But some of us really require actually more of that ahead of time notice. Maybe that will help mitigate some of that anxiety. So maybe you start off with those events where there's actually less socializing, there's less time to do so, but the time you do get to socialize, maybe during that lunch hour or in between the panels, in between the speakers, that's when you can really shine. And also, don't forget to give your business card. Talked about that. I've been in this field for over 5 years, and I'm actually going to my first academic conference this summer. It's taken me a while because I've been so nervous about it because I didn't really know how they worked. A way also you can get around this is look it up on YouTube. Seriously, watch a recording of an academic conference, or watch like someone's vlog or how they're preparing for an academic conference. That's coming up in the future on this channel. I don't know if any of you have done this where you go on Google Maps and you do like Street View to check out parking and check out like the seating situation somewhere. I always do this. But you can also kind of look up the past event. Like if the museum had recorded the same event last year, go check it out and go see how it runs, right? You can do as much research as you need to on the actual venue and on the structure of the event to make yourself feel comfortable. Number 4, host silent events. What on earth? I thought you said that in order to be a historian, you have to socialize. Well, yes, but there are ways to combine a calmer atmosphere and attract people who also like silence while still networking. So these events can be like, of course, book clubs, because book clubs aren't like loud, boisterous events. Silent reading clubs where you guys come together and just read together. Craft events where people are doing something, they're doing an activity. Now, of course, you can combine all of this with history, right? Like historic gardening, historic sewing, historic fashion, historic origami. There's a whole bunch of things you can do here. And the purpose of it is that there is an activity and a buffer. There is something that you are doing and what brings you guys together. So there's a lot more chit-chatting, like informal talk, but also you're not required to speak. Now, of course, you're hosting it, so you're giving instructions. But if you're attending this kind of event, there is something for you to do. You're not just sitting there, twiddling your thumbs. You are doing the origami, you're discussing the book, you're reading. I've attended a lot of events like this, and I am looking forward to kind of hosting them. For example, I'm going to be hosting Zoom history clubs, which is kind of like an after-school club for adults, where we can just sit back and chat about a historical topic. And it's not required that people share, but we're going to be discussing like hotly debated topics and kind of other considerations. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram so that you guys get every single update on this, because I'm launching this officially in May. So I want you guys to get all the updates. Also sign up for my newsletter, because my newsletter is going to come out with more links, more cool behind the scenes. So I've been to some other events, like for example, I live in DC, and the Smithsonian Museums often host what's called analog nights, where you lock up your phone and you get to go talk to people, but there's like, Connect 4 or coloring books or chess or like other games, or there's like magazines. There's things that do not require technology. And I find those to be super fun, because even as historians, we don't necessarily have to go to a historically based event to meet people. You never know who's going to be in the room. And to be honest, it behooves us to talk to people outside of our field, because you never know the interdisciplinary topics. If someone is a literary scholar or even a biologist, you never know how often they're talking about history, how often they're bringing historical study and research into their field. There are many times where like botanical gardens host like a history lecture in their community center aspect, right? Or how many times a nursing home will have a guest speaker come and talk to the residents. So going to these types of events and not just hosting them is also critically important. Number 5, acknowledge your success. And I know people are going to tell you this all the time, baby steps, and always celebrate your wins. But it's really true. What I'm going to say may not agree with everybody, okay? But your desire to become a historian must outweigh your fears. I'm not telling you to not have anxiety. I'm not telling you to always be confident and that having anxiety makes no sense. I'm telling you, your motivation needs to outweigh your fears. You can be scared, but you still want to do it, right? So the reason why I think I've gotten pretty far in such a short period of time is I really want this. I really want to get my book out there. Right? I want my second book to get a contract. I want to have my YouTube channel take off. I want my business to thrive. I want all the work I'm putting in to matter. And I'm doing it scared, and I'm doing it tired, and I'm doing it anxious. But at least I'm doing it, right? I had a moment where back when I was a high school history teacher, one of my colleagues asked me how on earth I come to work every day so happy. And I actually laughed in her face because, in my opinion, I thought I was showing all my fears and anxieties on my face. Like I didn't think I was hiding my social anxiety super well. But I realized the passion I have for teaching and the passion I had for educating my students and helping them and making their day better overrode any type of lack of confidence I had. It essentially started to replace over time my social anxiety, okay? So while she thought I was just generally happy is not the right word. I was very motivated, and I was grateful for the opportunity to teach. I was very grateful for what I had acquired so far, the rooms I've been able to go in. With every article that gets published, even though I've had dozens and dozens of articles published, I am still so thrilled and giddy when one comes out, right? I love every lecture I do. I've done dozens and dozens of lectures, but every time I do it, even if it's the same one over and over again, it brings me such joy because I know how hard I worked to get here, and I know all of the anxiety I had to overcome to actually stand there and talk to people. The anxiety I've had to overcome right now to talk to you guys on YouTube, right? So I want you to keep in mind all of your successes. But I want you to keep in mind that your motivation needs to outweigh your fears, always. I hope you found these tips helpful and useful for you. Are there any others you want to include? Anything else you use to help overcome your social anxiety? Comment below. For more tips on how to become a historian and overcome challenges, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Talk to you guys later. Bye!